Okay, thank you very much, Laura and Barb. Um, so we've just heard, about the broader landscape, where the research tells what the research tells us about men's health and aging, and how the men's shed movement is growing across Canada and globally, for that matter. So now, the next part of our meeting, we want to talk about health by stealth in action, and how connection, purpose, and a sense of belonging emerge naturally when men get together. Whether they're building something, fixing something, or simply spending time, over coffee in the shed. And I got to tell you, I'm a shedder myself, and I've seen dozens of examples, not only in my shed, but sheds across Canada, about how connection, about the importance of a shed and the impact it has on our shedders. How remarkable it is that a simple act of doing, side by side or shoulder to shoulder, as we often call it, becomes a doorway to better well-being. So we've got a terrific panel with us today to share some of their perspectives and experiences on Health by Stealth. And I'm going to introduce, first of all, Dr. Andy Tamas. Andy was the former vice president of Men's Sheds Canada, and the co-lead for our research and advocacy committee, and also involved in the Men's Shed Ontario organization as well. Then we have Robert Elhim from Quebec. He is the head of the Provincial Association in Quebec, and he hails from Lac Brome Men's Shed, and he's the current vice president of Men's Sheds Canada, so we want to welcome him. Jan Scorer, you probably heard a lot about the Ambleside project, the pergola that involved 5 sheds and the project that they were able to achieve. And so he's from Ontario, and he's also a newly elected member of our board. And finally, Danny Williams. Where's Danny? There's Danny. He's the founder of both Lac Brome and West Island Men's Shed. So each of our panelists will share a few reflections on what Health by Stealth looks like in their shed. And then we'll have a little bit of a conversation together before opening it up to questions and answers. And I know Barb's going to keep an eye on the amount of time that we spend on her so everybody gets a chance to speak. Before we get into that, I just want to give you a little bit of my experience in Health by Stealth. Yesterday, at the invitation of Andy, we went to his shed in Arnprior, the Braeside McNabb shed. And as we walked in, there's chatter everywhere, and there's a little laughter over here, and there's a coffee pot ready for sheds to enjoy. And I took a seat beside at one of the tables, and this gentleman looks at me without saying hello. He looks at me straight in the eye and he says, "This shed saved my life." Didn't say hi, nothing. "This shed saved my life." He not only said it once, he said it twice. And you can see in his eyes and in his heart, that it was heartfelt, that it did make a big difference in his life. The shed did save his life. And without asking him about, the circumstances behind him saying that, he kind of opened up. And he said, "Look, I was ill for a very long time. I delayed going to the doctor. I should have gone to the doctor. I didn't. When I went to the doctor, he diagnosed me with cancer." And you know what happens when you get a diagnosis like that? You start worrying, you're anxious, you get depressed, you lose purpose, you lose your identity, all the bad things that could possibly happen to you. And so he's delayed, again, going to the doctor until he was so bad, he went to the doctor, and the doctor told him, "Okay, I know you're very, very depressed, and I have 2 solutions for you. We can solve this problem medically, through a medical intervention with drugs, or we can do it through social intervention." And he said, "Join a men's shed." And, he wasn't too much aware of what a men's shed was, but he did join. He walks into the room and he can see people working on little projects. There's coffee there. People are happy. There are smiles, they're working on a little project side by side. And shoulder by shoulder and getting busy and are able to open up and, speak about their own personal experiences. And so over a period of months, as you got to know all these people, there's camaraderie, there's resilience, there's community, and there's acceptance. And a shed is a warm place, a warm, welcoming environment it provides to men. It's very magical. It does three things, and it's very, very simple. Somewhere to go, someone to talk to, and something to do. I mean, how simpler can it be? And yet, there's so much magic in a shed, and how it's able to impact on shedders' lives. Low cost, high impact. That's what a shed is all about, And we don't have enough of them. We don't have enough sheds in Canada now. We're just an evolving organization, and our objective is to start about 1,000 sheds by 2032, 200 by the end of March. And I was talking to Yan not very long, yesterday in fact, and he says, Robert, 1,000, you can get that in no time. I'll give you an example why. I live in a tower building. There are 350 or 382 units in there, and there are 3 towers within a 2-block area. We've got over 850 units. I have a shed in this particular tower. We can go all around, or we can go all around Ottawa and across the country, and there are hundreds and hundreds of these towers, and you have a captive audience. Men are there. Start a shed in those places, and it's true. But we have to mobilize ourselves. We have to find spark plugs to make those kinds of things happen, those sheds happen. So again, it's an incredible place, the shed. And there was a study done in Australia in 2022 where for every $1 invested in men's shed, they got a return of $7 in social value. I mean, that's incredible. And, we have to think like that. And I know Barb and I met with the Secretary, Stephanie McLean, Minister of Seniors, yesterday. We talked to her Chief of Staff for about an hour. And, we're trying to educate government and senior officials about the importance of men's shed and how can you help? What kind of what information do you need so that we can get a proper system in place? Because as we found out through Andy and Laura's research committee, there's a vacuum in policy for older men. There's nothing there. We did a literature review. There's nothing there, and we have to do something about that. And the other thing we have to do is understand the impact of Canadian sheds on members and the community. We haven't done that, and so we're going to get involved in that as well. So that's my story. I was going to tell you another story that happened at Squamish, but I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to turn things over to maybe Robert. Let's start with Robert for his experiences, please. Thank you.
Hello. You went over time.
Robert is always critical.
Thank you for listening and recognizing that men's health often begins simply in showing up. That's it. Yeah, I wrote a bit of a speech. It's two-sided. Je l'ai fait bilingue aussi, juste en cas qu'il y a des francophones ici. But I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Robert Elhim, from the president of Lac-Brome Men's Shed, and also vice president of Men's Shed Canada, and one of the directors of the newly formed Association des Sheds du Québec that was registered October the 8th this year, just recently.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we're going to try to open up more sheds. That was one of the things that Robert voluntold me for Quebec. So we're going to do that. We've got stories as well from our shed. Some of them similar. They're similar to what Robert said. We had health issues. We had one of the, I've got a script, but I don't think I'm going to go with it because it's going to be too long. He was worried. He was anxious and stuff like that because he had to go for a procedure. And he wasn't functioning properly. So I tried to talk to him. I opened up. We sat next to each other and I said, listen, I've been there. You can't worry about it. Not going to help worrying about it. Doctors don't care if you're worrying about it. It's you're the one got to be strong and just say you're going to get through it. It was a 5-minute talk or something like that. It helped. I called him a couple of days before his intervention, and then he succeeded, and he said, thank you. So it's the talk, the little bit of a talk the communication. The communication is the biggest part. One of the things that we've done also is when we had, some of the men lost their spouses. They don't know what to do. They're lost. They get to talk to somebody. So that's most of it's the communication with it. We also, on our projects to keep everybody busy, so we do projects. We do projects for personal projects. We do them for communities. And we appoint the lead. So somebody's got to step up to the plate, engage, and be the lead on the project. That gives them the purpose, the usefulness. They're happy because there's something that they're responsible for again. After your retirement, you don't know what to do, but this way it gives you basically a job. Some of them think of it as a job, but it's an opportunity. We've done vegetable boxes for the gardens for a school. We've done repaired canoes. We've repaired church doors. We've done all kinds of community projects, and we're getting recognized as the guys around town, which is helpful. We also started a repair cafe, which we've done 2 sessions, and we're going from Knowlton to Sutton to Waterloo, and that is a great success, not only for the person bringing the broken part, but for the person fixing it. They've got a satisfaction that they've managed to fix something and return that part to the person working again. So that's something that gives our shedders a good purpose. We also do some courses and things like that we help to learn. We're trying to communicate now with other sheds as well. So we're trying to partner with them and learn what other people are doing as well. My time's up. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Hi there. My name is Andy Tamas, and I had the pleasure of having his current job. I was the former vice president of Men's Shed Canada, but I decided not to run. There was a AGM recently, and I stepped back because I found that I was just dropping too many balls. I just couldn't keep up with the workload. So fortunately, there are other people that are more capable and have more neurons connected than I do that have stepped into that. I'm still active with the research and advocacy group, as Laura said, because my background is in organization development and governance in fragile states, and I'm going to talk more about this at the end. I get a few minutes at the end to wrap up. A little story from our shed. One of our guys is a recently retired police officer. No, not recently retired. He'd retired some years ago from a police force in Ontario. He went to the personnel department of his police force, and he said, on average, how many monthly pension checks do you issue after members retire? And the answer he got back was 11. 11 is the average life expectancy of a retired police officer from that force. That is staggering. That is absolutely staggering because they retire in their early 60s. Okay, so what we have is a loss of individuals, but also a loss of capacity, a loss of social capital. We have a loss of an opportunity for people to make contributions to the society. And that is really, really dangerous. It's really, really powerful. The government's current slogan is Canada Strong. How can Canada be strong if a significant portion of the people that can contribute to the country's strength is dead? That is not pleasant to say. What the guy told me, he said that if he hadn't joined the shed, he'd be dead now. All right? So I'm going to talk more about this at the end, but I thought that I would pass the mic over to another very active shedder here.
Hi, my name is Danny Williams. I'm not a leader of any type. I'll say that up front. I started the Lac Brome Men's Shed only because I had two friends that committed suicide, and I also have a nephew that committed suicide. And I watched my father after my mother died. I watched him slide into depression and everything else like that. My father never did recuperate from his depression. He had nothing to do. He was older. He didn't have contacts. I tried to move him into Lac Brome. He came and he just missed Peterborough, where he's from. And he went into a retirement home, and I just watched him fall apart. He sent me a magazine that talked about men's shed, and I had no idea whatsoever what a men's shed was. But the idea was there. And so I started the men's shed. I had no idea what I was doing. I just put it on Facebook. I'd like to start a group. I did a little bit of advertising, stuff like that. The night of our first meeting, it was supposed to start at 6:30. Nobody showed up. And at 6:29, all of a sudden the doors opened and 20 guys walked in. And it's like, what happened here? It's like, obviously I touched some button. And the men's shed started. And then COVID started, and it fell apart. And then I started it up again. And then that's when Robert walked in. And when Robert walked in, all of a sudden we had a leader, right? And he's a phenomenal leader. I moved to Point Claire in 2024. I missed the men's shed, so I thought, I'm going to start another men's shed, right? So I started up a second men's shed. Same thing happened again. All of a sudden, lots of guys showed up, and we've been growing ever since. And so obviously there's a need out there. And I don't know if we've saved anybody or we didn't save anybody, but we're growing all the time. People come from 1 or 2 meetings, all of a sudden they're there full time. And what's happening is, again, I'm not a leader. Edward Cho, he stepped up, and all of a sudden he became the leader of the men's shed. And so it's working out wonderful. For those people that want to start up men's sheds, you don't need a lot of money. We survived the whole year on $1,000, right? We have 3 different venues where we hold our meetings and stuff like that. The Legion stepped up. They allow us to use their premises. We have a community resource center. They allow us to use their premises. We got in touch with the Montreal Aviation Museum. They have a huge workshop that they're building right now. They're going to spend $500,000 on that workshop, and we have full access to it. So you don't need a lot of money to start a men's shed. Just put the word out there, and it seems to grow on its own. And so now there's 2 men's sheds. They're both thriving. We're growing all the time. We do all kinds of activities. We don't even have a workshop yet, but we're going to have one real soon. It's just a wonderful experience. I'm 75 years old. My wife died 3 years ago. I see a lot of men go into depression about it. I took a different venue. I decided I don't function well as an individual. I knew I'd go into a depression. And so I put the word out there that I gave people my age and everything. I told them who I was. I met somebody, and now I've got a 3rd family, and it's thriving. And so don't sit back. Don't just give up on life. Get out there, do stuff, get a hold of a men's shed, and you'll find your whole life will change. So that's my story. Anyways, I'll pass you on.
That's a hard act to follow. So my name is Jan Skora. You would have talked to me 3 years ago, I would have never been up here. Never would have joined Men's Shed. Never would have started the Men's Shed. I don't need that. I'm fine, thanks very much. Don't bother me. That's where I was 3 years ago. And fortunately, in our community, a bunch of us got together. We live in high rises, and we heard about something called a naturally occurring retirement community. This is where a bunch of old, drooling people like me get together and socialize and talk about eating more healthily, getting together and doing a few things together. And we actually found that there was a fair bit of interest in this. And we said, great, let's keep on working. So we organized a bunch of things. And I noticed after a while that I was the only guy in the room. And I said, what the hell is going on here? Well, it's obvious. Guys don't join these sorts of things, you know. They don't need it. They're fine. How you doing? Perfect. So I was, as the only guy in this organizing group, I was told, well, do something about it. And I happened to be at a conference, and the guy to the left of me here was talking, and he talked about Men's Shed. And so I said, well, I'll give it a try. What the hell? You know, what have I got to lose? Went back, started organizing it. And it takes a lot of work. I'll admit that. But it's thriving now. Now, everybody's told a bit of a medical story, so let me give you my medical story. Give you a sense of the mood here. So we have a fix-it cafe like Robert has, and we get together, a bunch of guys. Nobody ever messes. The only time they mess is if they're dead. So one guy was talking about the fact that he had to go in for colonoscopy. At our age, these are sort of natural, but it was his first, you know, so he listened and things like that, tried to make a few wisecracks. And that was that. He went. And the following week, the guy came in. He said, you know, I have a potential aneurysm, so I've got to get this tube down my esophagus and go down and check things out and camera and all that. A little worried about it. Not too many of us had that happen. But one guy cracked up and says, gee, I hope they don't use the same camera they used on Fred. Lighten up the mood. Everybody laughed, and we sort of relaxed a little bit, you know. I'm really happy that all of you showed up here, because it's not often that I feel that anybody really cares about the way men are functioning in society. I think Men's Shed is there's a lot of ways of trying to deal with issues in society these days. When we get sick, we look for a drug to help us. I think Men's Shed is a really effective social prescribing way of dealing with issues. And you know, as an organizer of Men's Shed, you keep wondering, is this really working? Is it something that really makes any difference? Because how can you tell, really? And one day we were having coffee, a bunch of us, and a new guy shows up. He didn't come into the room by mistake thinking it was something else. And so he sat down and we introduced ourselves. And the first guy that talked, he says, you know, this is really working. And I said, well, how can you tell, honestly? Because I've been trying to figure this out for 6 months. He says, you know, I've been in this building for 15 years. And whenever I get in an elevator and there's another guy there, I go, and that's it, you know? That's it. Now, he says, when I've talked to you, I get in the elevator and I say, hey, Jan, how's it going? How are things moving with this stuff? And how's that project you're working on? And we have a discussion and we're talking. And he says, when I go down to the barbecue, we have a big barbecue area. And he looks around, and before he said, I used to look around. If I didn't see anybody I knew, I just walked away. Now he says, I look around, someone I met at coffee, didn't talk to him, but I met him. So I sit down and have a chat with him, and I get that going. And so I just want to leave you with a few thoughts coming out of my experience with Men's Shed. We don't necessarily talk about health, but we live it. We're getting healthier as we're doing this. Doing things feels good, we're finding out. The skills that we have and the skills that we share, they're actually medicine for us. And connection for us is a cure, not just a remedy, it's a cure. Thanks very much.
So speaking of medicine, Yan, the Australian and New Zealanders coined a term called, they combined medicine and shedicine, humorously and affectionately. And it's quite an interesting term, shedicine, social prescription and social intervention, what a powerful force that is for, helping men's sheds. One of the things that you may not know is that, many of our sheds have been started by women. I know our shed in Squamish was started by a woman. She was the coordinator of the Better at Home program. She went to Australia on a holiday, saw one of the sheds, absolutely was impressed by it, came back. I've got to really make something like that happen in Squamish. And sure enough, it happened. And so, all of you have, husbands or wives, husbands for you, the women that are here, brothers, fathers, grandfathers, uncles, see if they need a shed. Ask them to join a shed if there is a need. And if not, start one. And Men's Sheds Canada will help you, will guide you on how to start a shed. And as I said earlier, we want to start as many sheds as possible across Canada. Any community that wants one, we should make it available to them. There are two questions I wanted to ask, one to our panel and one, to you, if I may. What would you say are some of the signs that indicate, shedders may need our support? What do you look for in a shed when you speak to the different shedders and say, wow, does this guy need help or not? How do you determine that? Anybody want to take a crack at it?
One of the shedders, I guess for maybe we have coffee every Tuesday mornings at 9:30. Anybody wants to join? He showed up, he started coming to the meetings, but he never said anything. He never talked to anybody. It went on for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then finally he started opening up and talking a little bit. So I think a lot of the things that we find is that they're call it shy or something like that, or don't know exactly how to place themselves. And I think they got friendly with a couple of them, and then they started talking to a few. And then we find out, like he has a motorcycle. So I talked to him about motorcycles. So it's something like that. It has to open up. So a lot of them are, I guess, isolated or closed, and then they don't know how to communicate properly to start off with. So I think that's one of the key issues is to look at somebody, and if he hasn't talked for 3 weeks, we know that he needs help.
One of our guys looks like a refugee from the Hells Angels. He's a big, tough, muscular guy. He shows up with a baseball hat with glasses on the top of it. And you'd think that this was the toughest guy in the world. He took me aside one day and he said, "My cancer has come back." And he said, "I'm going in for my 11th operation." It was a quiet discussion off on the side. I gave him a hug, and then I went and visited him in the hospital. And he certainly didn't look like a Hells Angels guy in the hospital. His teeth were out and all of that. He looked like a wreck of a human being, but he had a spark in his eye. And that is and he's come back and he's made a bench now for the hospice in Renfrew. And the bench is beside the phone booth by the hospice, which doesn't connect to anything. You can make a phone call to whoever is your partner in the sky in this silent booth. And he made this bench and he was so happy about that.
And I think from my experience, basically, if somebody shows up at a men's shed, that means that he's looking for something. And before you know it, he may not be talking to me, but he'll be talking to the guy next to him. And that starts the conversation. And the hardest part about a men's shed is to get the guys over their shyness. That's always the biggest thing. But after they come to 2 or 3 meetings, you'll find they start opening up, they start talking, then they meet somebody new, and then they start talking. And so it just keeps on going like that. Quite often I'll get a phone call from somebody. They've never been to a men's shed, but they're just curious about it. So that tells me right off the bat, they're looking for something, right? And so I try and play up the men's shed, what it's all about and that. I'll meet them for coffee. So now they know me, right? So the next meeting they come to, they at least know me, right? And so that starts them in the whole process. So that's the way I recognize it.
I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question, Robert, because I don't necessarily look for guys that need help. Although there are sometimes, maybe I'm a little dense, my problem, but sometimes guys will make a small comment about, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing all right. Dad's having a little bit of a tough time, and that's it. Well, that's a thread that you can talk about. But in reality, I think what I've found is that it's not me necessarily reaching out, but once guys get comfortable in the group, they'll get comfortable with someone. And you'll see a couple of them talking in the corner over there. You see them going for long walks together. And I don't know what's being said, but I figure there's something happening there, which is good. And that's what it's all about. You create an opportunity and let guys take advantage of it if they're ready. And if they're not ready, maybe sometime they will be.
Okay, thank you, guys. Well, so here's a question for all of you. How do we tell the story of health by stealth in a way that funders and policymakers will understand? Who would like to take a shot at that? I know it's a tough one, and I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but we'd like some. Yes, in the back, please. Thank you.
Thank you. This is fascinating. I'm a sociologist, so what I want to do is I want to go into the men's shed and take notes. But I do qualitative work, and I think the statistics are very important, but I think the stories are how you get policymakers to pay attention. So a few of the stories that you've told up there, they're very, very powerful stories. So the policymakers won't do anything without the statistics, but you have to move their hearts. And I think the stories might move their hearts.
I just want to give an example. I'm with the West Island Men's Shed, and I keep track of all the members who come to what meeting, whatever. So I noticed that one of our person, his name is Bill, he's 90 years old, and he had missed 6 or 7 meetings in a row. So I responded. I sent a quick email saying, Bill, are you okay? I hope everything's fine. And he told me that, well, the next day he was going to go in for a hernia operation. And I said, I hope you're okay with that. But it so happened that a few weeks before, another member was going through a hernia operation, had the hernia, and was recuperating. So I asked Bill, would you like me to speak to this person to see if he would be okay to talk to you about his experience? And so I called that person up, the other member, and he said yes. And so they communicated. So it's all about communication was really important and helping each other, you know.
I just wanted to say I agree very much about the relatability of stories, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's sitting here thinking about the men in my life and the different ways that men's sheds intersect, either in terms of preventative health or health situations that are already happening. I did want to say that probably not a barrier, but a thing to navigate is the gender discussion, which is always difficult with government. So you probably have to figure out how to nuance that. I know I struggle with that topic myself when I'm sort of advocating for women's health, because if you're talking sort of men versus women, it's always sticky. So I think with government officials, it's about this type of thing, hearing these stories here, and then some of what you said about men in each other's lives and the relatability and stuff. I also think there's layers to the story that you can be telling. I'm sitting here thinking about my husband, who's not a fixer-upper kind of person, and who actually often, it's maybe bad to say this out loud, but in the car when we're going to a hardware store, he knows that I actually know more about this stuff than he does, but he makes sure I don't talk that way when I'm in the shop so that he can relate. But he also bonds with, because he didn't have a man growing up, a male figure growing up, he bonds with men who know how to do these things, where he can gently learn without feeling that his sort of manlyhood or whatever is being, put in question. And so I think these are other layers of stories that can be told. And then I would suspect that sort of funding could be local and regional level, and just that energy. Anyways, I think it's very exciting, the work you're doing.
Thank you. I think they could hear you. Oh, okay. And I see one more comment, and then maybe I'll bring it back up to Robert after.
I'm from West Island Men's Shed. I just agree with all what you said about communication and stories. I just want to add something to it. That is to get funding or to communicate with the policymakers and all, to bring the story such as only 11 people got the paycheck. They are nobody else. So what does tell signifies, as you mentioned. So connect it with the government priorities, those personal stories, because everybody has father, uncle, family members. How can you personalize, do a little bit of background check research on the person you're going to meet and take some history of that person. Now Mr. Google can give you everything. So you can go there, check it up, and then try to hit those points that you want to say. That's what I would like to add to this.
Barb, is our time up?
I think we're going to improvise on the part after the break a little bit. So if people have questions that all the panel members, that would be okay.
Yeah, so Barb was just saying if anybody has any questions, we can take a few quick questions before we move on to the break. And if not, maybe I'll just give it to Robert to conclude the panel.
So before I say thank you to the panel, I just want to let you know the person that I spoke with, the shedder in Arnprior, he recovered from his depression. And he, in fact, was a real superb carver. And he carved a skate out of wood and raffled it off for $2,000 and donated it back to the shed, as a thank you gesture for, all the good things that happened to him because of the shed. So I'll close on that. And thank you very much, everybody here. It was very nice to hear what you had to say. Thank you for your experiences and knowledge. It's coffee time. Thank you.